What a gift to be here. I am actually, as some of you know, very familiar with this stage. I've been teaching on this stage for 40 plus years at this point. I have a very clear memory, and just thinking about what Katie just said, of actually walking across the stage when I was 8 months pregnant with my almost 40-year-old daughter. So this is a first and a repeat performance in many ways. I'm going to be speaking about a program that I developed a number of years ago, but in the spirit of identity, which is a through thread through all of the voices that we've heard today. The program I'm going to be introducing you to is called Art at the Bedside, and it's a practice that combines art and bedside care, born of multiple forces, magnetic forces in my life. And so I begin with identity. I come from a medical family. I'm the daughter of a doctor and a nurse. And although I totally failed to follow in their professional footsteps, it was my father's work and my mother's work, the stories of being at the bedside that truly informed me, and what I will share with you in just a bit. There is also the reality that my life was shaped in ways that you don't know if you're a young one, and it's ever so. My life was shaped by a chronic reality. I had a younger brother with epilepsy. This is in the 1960s. It was uncontrolled epilepsy. And so whenever I was, as the eldest, sent out to do errands, I always had my little brother in tow. But at the door was always, if your brother has a seizure, bring him straight home. And I have multiple memories of exactly that. So caretaking. Part of a medical family, it was a lived reality on many, many ways. So medicine, art. Art has always been a part of my life. Heather, I am not an artist. And yet I have always been, this magnetic drawn to the arts, especially the visual arts and writing. In college and then in graduate school, I studied art history. That academic field is delicious, but what really drew me was museum work. This is the stage where I'm most at home. As much as I love art, it's really connecting people and art. I am, in the trade, I am a museum educator. As a museum educator, I am always observing how museum conversations happen, especially in the presence of art. How a casual conversation can suddenly take a profound and deep dive. And people speak with great tenderness, as well as often vehemence. And the gift of being present for these conversations and actually facilitating them from the side has become a vital part of my life's work. And what it really awakened me to is art's potential. Its potential as a guide to serve to our inner selves. Now, this is going to seem probably like a U-turn, but it's absolutely not. Chaplaincy. Perhaps it's having been raised in a medical family, hospitals were very familiar to me. Perhaps it is my brother's gift of allowing me to see how challenged life can be and what my role was. As a chaplain, I remember with my husband saying, it's like you're a baseball player and you're out in the field and you say, I've got it, it's mine. I've never been afraid of running toward that ball. Though often challenging, sitting at the bedside was actually never difficult. As a hospital and hospice chaplain, I found it was not hard. It might be difficult, but it was not hard. What was hard, and that conversation about reflection, when did it turn for you? What was hard was surrendering a plastic badge. It's a plastic badge that has, I don't know, it's 72 font type on the bottom that says chaplain. It was surrendering that at the end of my period of service. I had, by so feeling that loss, really understood what a calling is. So this is how Art at the Bedside was born. It came into being at the end of my first training stage as a hospital chaplain here in Rochester at Strong Memorial Hospital. I so missed being with people that I conceived of this program that combined art, believing in its potential, combined art with the privilege of being in the hospital because I knew that it could serve far more than decoration. I counted, yes, on the evocative potential of art in itself, and I was informed by something called a third thing. A third thing has been defined in different ways by different individuals, but I have internalized Parker Palmer's definition of a third thing. He is a distinguished Quaker educator, and it's a practice that puts between people who are in deep conversation an object. It can be a leaf, it can be a poem, it can be a work of art. And looking at this third thing, they are able to navigate a space and go to it in a way that face-to-face wouldn't work. So now I'm going to take you into this experience. Imagine meeting someone, a perfect stranger, for the first time in the hospital. They are in bed, and you are sitting beside them. And what are you doing? You're bringing a work of art to their bedside. Sometimes it was a laminated reproduction. Sometimes it was in a computer loaded with images. But what I'm bringing you today are 4 images by a photographer, a local photographer whose name is Larry Merrill. He and I worked together for many years here at the Memorial Art Gallery, but also many of these photographs were actually created specifically for Art at the Bedside. The process always begins with a pause. In the computer I held for the person in the bed, I hold silence and let them look and begin to navigate through the image. I let you navigate this as well. Holding silence is essential because looking takes time. Sometimes the patients are eager to see what's next. Sometimes they want to linger. It's up to being at the bedside to read what they need. I remember looking at a wooded scene very much like this, with a patient when a technician came into the hospital room and needed to perform a procedure. I offered, of course, to leave, but the patient said, no, stay. The procedure moved to the background as we continued what they would call our walk in the woods. The patient, seeing the technician leave, said, it's okay, you can do your thing now. All done, the technician said. All done. I didn't feel a thing. So this gnarled tree, the darkness in the foreground and the light in the background. It was another image very much like this that was the starting point for several conversations. I was holding my computer, once again, for a patient as we were sitting in a hospital room, one of those that has a window seat. They looked up from the screen at me, tapped on the window, and said, I'm getting out of this place. I'm getting back to the real world, outside. That resilience, that determination went the distance for me. Others will focus more on the light in the distance. Distant light means different things to different people. It's as if seeing the light in the distance, they're seeing the future. See that light, someone said? That's where I'm headed. As many know, there are often, hospital stays are very short. But there are units in the hospital where extended hospital stays are the norm, and thus the gift of multiple visits. Several days after a visit, looking at an image very much like this, I revisited a patient who told me they'd shared the visit we'd had a couple of days before with their spouse, and that night they dreamt about the artwork we'd seen together. That artwork had been a beacon itself of hope. The units I often visited most were where patients were often nearing the end of their lives. Looking at this photograph with a patient prompted, "I am so glad not all your pictures are sunny and spring green." This photograph of a beech tree in late fall opened a conversation about dying. The brown leaves had recently been green. The tree trunk graffitied with initials, scars on the bark. And if you look over to the lower right, there's a half-seen inscribed heart. Has that heart stood the test of time? Art at the Bedside has found a life of its own. There are individuals here, docents, who are visiting patients at Monroe Community Hospital now, residents at Monroe Community Hospital. There are chaplains with whom I've worked closely and have provided images, chaplains at Strong Hospital as well as Rochester Regional Health, that are using works of art as gateways to conversations, as third things, to make connections that may or may not have been possible without. And there is a second-year internal medicine resident at Mount Sinai who studied art at the bedside for a year, studied it, researched it. It is beginning to have a life of its own. Art at the bedside is essentially a reflective practice that begins with carefully chosen works of art. The facilitator's role is important. This is not art history. This is to be present. As a practice, it asks the facilitator for comfort with both silence and following a conversation wherever it goes. It is, after all, a practice of presence. Thank you.